Flying in a 10 into the Hindu Kush is suicide. Every pilot knows those ridges, thin air, crosswinds like knives, hidden missile nests waiting in the dark. Extraction there is impossible. The kind of terrain that swallows helicopters and radar alike. Yet when 32 Navy SEALs were ambushed inside that labyrinth of rock and ice, one grounded pilot broke every rule. Captain Riley Maddox launched alone in a crippled Warthog with no targeting system, racing against time, her past mistakes, in a kill zone designed to be inescapable. The mountains of the Hindu Kush stretched like jagged blades against a pale Afghan sky. Snow crusted the highest ridges, while the valleys below hid shadows where no aircraft radar could see. On this morning, 32 Navy SEALs were deep in those valleys, and a storm of gunfire was closing in. At Bagram Air Base, the alarm had not sounded yet. Captain Riley Maddox sat at a steel desk, flipping through inventory logs instead of flight plans, stacks of forms, maintenance checklists, and spare parts orders. This was the prison her career had become. She was 27. She had trained for war, earned her wings, and flown the 810 Thunderbolt with precision. But one mistake in training had chained her here. The memory lived inside her skull like shrapnel, a mock strike over a desert range. She squeezed the trigger a fraction too early, and practice rounds tore into a zone marked for friendly armor. No one had died, but a Humvee was shredded, and the men inside had been seconds from disaster. Her commander's verdict was swift: ground her, too reckless, too unstable. Riley replayed that day every time she heard the hydraulic whine of an 810 turning on the flight line. Every time the cannon roared in the distance, her heart clenched. She could almost hear the imagined screams of men she almost killed. Major Braxton, her commanding officer now, believed she was useful only for logistics. He said it to her face once: "Maddox, you're steady with numbers, stick to the clipboard." Since then, she was buried in paper, forgotten in war. Only one man still treated her like a pilot: Captain Eli Hollinger. Years ago, when her A-10 caught fire after a hard landing, Hollinger had pulled her from the cockpit seconds before the jet exploded. He carried the scars across his left forearm to prove it. Now, whenever she hinted about flying again, Hollinger's voice turned hard. "I saved you once. Don't make me watch you burn twice." It wasn't contempt. It was fear. But fear didn't stop Riley from sneaking into the simulator after hours. She knew the systems better than anyone in her squadron. Night after night, she flew secret missions across the digital terrain of Afghanistan, programming weather, altitude, enemy guns into each run. Her obsession was one valley in particular: narrow, twisting, crosswinds howling like knives. Special operations team in contact. A voice shouted from the radio bay. 2 SEAL squads under heavy fire in Hindu Kush, Grid 97 Alpha requesting immediate air support. Riley's pen dropped. Her chest tightened as if the words were meant only for her. The coordinates were the very valley she had rehearsed again and again. Inside the ops center, Major Braxton barked orders, already shaking his head. Too steep for insertion. Helicopters are out. F-16S inbound from Kandahar. ETA 20 minutes. He glanced at the map and muttered, "They won't make it in time." Riley pressed closer, ignored the glares from other officers. She knew what the red pins on her own map meant. F-16S couldn't strike that valley without risking the SEALs themselves. Static crackled over the speakers. Then the voice of a SEAL commander, tight but steady. "This is Reaper 1. We're cut off. Ammo's low. If you can't get birds over us in 10, we're done." The room went silent. Riley's nails dug into her palms. This was it. The impossible scenario she had trained for alone in the dark. And she was stuck behind a desk with ghosts in her head and no orders in her hands. But deep inside, a decision had already begun to form. The same decision that had haunted her dreams and kept her awake in the simulator at 3 a.m. If no one else would fly that valley, she would. The command center smelled of sweat and hot electronics. Screens glowed with maps of the Hindu Kush. Valleys lit in red where enemy fire cut off escape. Voices overlapped, sharp and clipped, each second heavier than the last. Major Braxton stood in front of the main display, his tone flat. F-16s will arrive in 17 minutes. They'll strike the outer ridges, open a path for helicopters if possible. But everyone knew the truth. Strike jets couldn't touch targets pressed that close to the SEALs. The radio carried the SEAL leader's voice again. We've lost 3 already, 30 minutes of ammunition left. If air doesn't clear those ridges, we're gone. A silence followed, as if even the machines in the room were listening. Riley stood at the back, unnoticed at first, her eyes locked on the digital map. Every ridge familiar, every choke point burned into her memory. She whispered under her breath, "That's the valley. That's the one." Braxton slammed his hand on the console. "No warthogs, too narrow, too many missiles, we won't waste aircraft." To him, it was settled. Doctrine closing the door. Hollinger, helmet still under his arm, stepped forward. "I'll say it clear, anyone flying that canyon isn't coming back alive." His words carried the weight of a man who'd seen pilots burn. Riley clenched her jaw. She had trained for this exact map, this exact ambush. The odds were terrible, but so were the odds for the 32 men on the ground. When the meeting broke, she followed Hollinger into the corridor. He turned before she could speak. "Don't even think it, I know that look." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "You know I can fly that canyon." His face hardened. "I also know what happens when you squeeze the trigger and freeze. You almost killed your own once. You think that ghost won't follow you down there." The words hit harder than she expected. Her throat tightened, but she refused to look away. "If I don't try, they're dead. That's worse than my fear." Hollinger lowered his voice, almost a plea. "I pulled you out of fire once. Don't make me bury you because you can't forgive yourself." Then he walked off, shoulders rigid, leaving her alone with the echo. Back in the hangar, mechanics worked over a line of A-10s. One jet sat apart, tail number 211, fueled but grounded. A tech muttered, "HUD's fried, targeting computer glitches out every run. No one's touching it." Riley ran her hand along the titanium skin. The warthog felt like an old warhorse, battle-worn yet waiting. Her mind ticked through every manual calculation she had memorized. The angles, the drift, the way bullets fell without a computer telling her where. She asked the crew chief quietly, systems functional besides the HUD, engine strong, hydraulic solid, full load of ammo. "She'll fly but blind." He gave a short laugh. "Wouldn't put my worst enemy in that seat today." To Riley, it was no joke. The broken HUD meant the fight would be raw instinct, not electronics. It was suicide by the book, but survival by feel. She returned to her quarters, locked the door, and pulled open the drawer by her bunk. Inside lay a folded letter she had written weeks ago. A letter meant for no one unless she never came back. She added one line at the bottom. "If you read this, know I chose to act when others chose to wait." Her hands trembled only once, then steadied. Flight suit zipped. Helmet bag over her shoulder, boots laced tight. Every motion felt final, but also right. On her way out, she nearly collided with Hollinger. He saw the helmet, the fire in her eyes. "Don't," he said, voice low, but desperate. "Not you, not like this." Riley's answer was quiet, almost gentle. "You saved me once, but this time it's not about me." Then she walked past him, steps echoing against the hangar floor. The warthog loomed in front of her, bathed in harsh floodlights. Techs shouted questions, but she climbed the ladder without answering. Every clank of her boots on metal sounded like a countdown. Cockpit closed. Engines roared alive, twin turbines shaking the air. She checked gauges by muscle memory, ignoring the blank HUD glass in front of her. Control tower crackled with confusion. Tail 211, "You're not cleared for departure. Repeat, not cleared." She flipped her comms to tactical only, muting the protests. If she listened, doubt would return. Hollinger appeared at the edge of the runway, waving his arms. His mouth moved, but she couldn't hear him through the canopy. Her chest ached at the sight, but her hand stayed firm on the stick. Brake release. Throttle forward. The A-10 lunged down the strip, engines screaming into the night. As the wheels lifted free of the asphalt, Riley Maddox whispered to herself, "No HUD, no second chances, just me and them." The Hindu Kush waited in the dark ahead, and 32 men prayed she would get there first. The night sky swallowed her warthog as she climbed above Bagram. Cloud banks rolled across the horizon, hiding the jagged teeth of the Hindu Kush. Every vibration of the cockpit reminded her she was flying blind. The HUD glass flickered with static, then died completely. No reticle, no guiding box, no safety net. She whispered to herself, "It's just steel sky and me." Radio crackled with the SEAL commander's voice. 15 minutes of ammo left. Enemy closing from 3 sides. Gunfire and shouts bled through the transmission. Riley banked east, hugging the contour she had studied for months. Her eyes searched the moonlit ridges, memorizing shapes like old scars. The map in her head guided her better than any screen ever could. In the command center, Braxton barked into his headset. "Confirm tail 211 airborne. Who authorized this?" Peterson answered grimly, "Sir, it's Maddox." Hollinger stood frozen near the display. He knew her pattern. The low-altitude trace on radar unmistakable. His lips moved with words he didn't say. "Please don't fail this time." The valley opened beneath her, a black wound carved into the mountains. Tracer fire arced upward like angry sparks. Her warning light screamed. Missile lock detected. Instinct took over. She yanked the stick, dove into the canyon at a reckless angle. The missile streaked past, exploding harmlessly against rock. Below, the SEALs huddled in craters, muzzles flashing in bursts. In the ops center, the feed from drones showed the impossible. Maddox was threading rounds within 30 meters of friendlies without a single blue on blue. Braxton swore under his breath, half in rage, half in disbelief. Hollinger whispered, "She's doing it. God help her, she's actually doing it." No one replied. Every eye stayed locked on the screen, as if willing her to survive. Riley's jet shuddered. Warning lights blazed red, hydraulic pressure dipping. Shrapnel from an RPG had clipped her wing. She gritted her teeth, forced the stick level. The bird held together, battered but willing. "Not yet," she muttered. "You'll hold for me." Below, the SEALs began moving, darting toward an opening she had carved. One shouted over radio, "Corridor clear, we've got a way out." Her chest swelled, but the fight wasn't over. On the far ridge, muzzle flashes erupted from hidden cave. If they reached that kill zone, the SEALs would be shredded. It was the final choke point, her last shot. She banked hard, engines straining, nose down, canyon walls closing in, alarms shrieking. Her eyes locked on the cave mouth. This was the distance of her worst nightmare, the exact angle where she had once pulled wrong. Her pulse pounded, sweat stinging her eyes. She steadied her breathing, shut out every ghost. Only the mountain, the target, the men below. Her finger pressed the trigger, firm and final. The cannon spat fire. Rounds slammed into the cave, collapsing stone, silencing the guns. Silence followed, broken only by SEAL radios screaming relief. "Thunderbolt, you did it. Paths open, we're moving." Cheers echoed through the valley, men sprinting toward escape. Riley's hand shook, but the warthog held steady. She exhaled, a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She had done what no one else dared, but in the pit of her stomach a weight remained. A report came through SEAL comms, almost drowned by static. "Cave system, civilians inside. 1 casualty confirmed." Riley froze. The ground tilted, though her jet flew straight. Her vision blurred, chest heavy. She had saved 32, but taken 1. Riley Maddox had flown into the Hindu Kush blind, carried by instinct and scars. She had brought men home, and she had left someone behind. Sometimes saving 32 lives means carrying one ghost forever.